what got you where you are today?
I am a sober coach, podcast host, and author. I'm in the space that I'm in because on August 18th of 2012 is the first day that I started my sobriety journey. So I haven't had a drink in over 10 and a half years. It's crazy to think it's been that long when I can still vividly remember that first day. So I was in a decade-long love affair. That's what I like, a toxic love affair with alcohol for 10 years, from 19 to about 229. I was 6 weeks shy of being 30. My 30th birthday, I thought I was going to spend in Las Vegas, whooping it up. And thank God the universe did not put me in Las Vegas in my active drinking days, because that would have been a nightmare. So I had that 10-year love affair, and it started off very innocently and then grew and grew and grew and grew into something that was very dark, very crippling. I missed a lot of opportunities in my 20s because I continuously went back to drinking and having that active addiction. So at 29, I said I was done with it. I had lost my cat, my rescue cat, for a second time. My boyfriend I was living at the time, he was like, we were a year and a half into our relationship, and he was like, you can continue to drink, but I'm not going to stick around with it. I mean, this was after, a couple nights of me being a menace. And nobody wants to be in that relationship with the person who has an addiction to alcohol use disorder. I know that the term nowadays with alcoholism is starting to become outdated, and it's switched over to alcohol use disorder. And there you could put gray area drinking on that, problematic drinking, all of it. So nobody wants to be in a relationship with that. I wouldn't want to be in a relationship, nowadays, with that being in my sober journey. So I quit drinking and took the road of recovery. And in about year 6, I then started coaching people and then growing Sober Vibes. So it is what it is today because all of what I needed more in the recovery process.
Now tell me, when you're in the recovery process, did you find some things worked better than others? Did you have to try different groups? Did you have to go, where did you find what worked best for you?
So I am a person who firmly believe you need to try everything. You need to try everything until something sticks, So in the beginning, very, very early on, I tried a couple AA meetings. It was not for me, but I did go back in year 4. And then that's how the Sober Vibes kind of came about, because I sat there and listened and I was like, all right, people need more. I needed more. I've done therapy. I mean, I've done therapy since I was in high school. So therapy has always been my go-to. Online support communities, coaches. I've done it all. I've done it all. And I just think that this is how I look at it. Have I been in therapy continuously for 10 and a half years? No. You use things that suit you at that time in place of your life, right? That connect with you. Am I still in AA? No, I used it at the time that I needed it, participated. Could I go back? Yes, of course, if I ever need that down the road. But I believe in people trying whatever they need to do to make it stick, where they feel seen, heard, and connected, and that it's helping them, because you don't want to go into something where you're like, this isn't helping me and I'm still continuing to go. What is the point of that,
Right. Yeah.
Or if it's making you worse, because that's possible too.
Right. We definitely don't want it to make us any worse. Mm-hmm. You didn't have a family when you were going through alcohol abuse.
No. No. Well, yes, my family, but I did not know. There was no kids, a lot of relationships I ruined. That boyfriend actually ended up being my husband. So we're married today with a 1.5-year-old.
Stuck around.
Yes.
How about with just your personal family?
The what?
How did it affect your personal family?
That is there's so many layers to that question, because at the end of the day, I was 29 years old. I was very much functioning, right? So we all, in the family, we all knew I had a problem. Okay. But it wasn't like I was going to any of them for help. No, nothing, because I never asked for help. So it really did not affect my personal family because my personal family had their own bag.
Oh, that's good. What are some healthy strategies that you give as suggestions now through SoberLink? Tell me what advice do you give to people who are personally battling this?
Through Sober Vibes. If you're personally battling this, the one thing you need to do is eventually reach out. You have to reach out for help. One, you have to accept you might not like it, but you have to accept it. I'm not sitting here saying that you need to stand up and say that you're an alcoholic, but you actually, number one, you need to realize that you have a problem with alcohol. Mm-hmm. Okay. That you've tried, because I'm sure a lot of people who are listening to this have probably tried and tried and tried and tried, and it's not sticking. So if you're a person who's tried and tried and tried and tried, you need to do something different than what you have been doing. Yep. Because what you have been doing is not working. And if that's reaching out for help, whether it's through a sober coach, going to the 12-step program, getting a therapist, you need to get help outside of yourself other than admitting the fact that you do have a problem with alcohol. The third thing I would mention too is you need to find a hobby and something to do that's positive and not there's a whole world of things to do. So for you to say like, oh, I don't have anything to do, it's because you spent so much of your time in a relationship with alcohol and just drinking. So you got to find something healthy to do to fill that void of what you were doing sitting there in the act of drinking. Mm-hmm. So yeah, definitely say those three would be the top.
I know that we can get into some things that you do suggest. You have great resources on your site, but before that, I want to connect it to what clients I am working with are experiencing. Mm-hmm. And I know we've mentioned that you had a boyfriend and now you're married to him. So I'm so mm-hmm. glad, like I said, he stuck through this. But for people who are clients of our firm, they're typically going through a divorce or they're considering a divorce. And the third biggest reason for people to get divorced is an addiction to drugs or alcohol. And so that's a big number. There's 14 million people, they say, dealing with substance abuse addiction right now. And so what do you say to people who would be my client, whether it's them experiencing the addiction or their spouse that they are currently separating from? How do you set boundaries? But if they're dealing with this addiction, you don't want to push them and make things worse because you're also supporting to not bring them back to, where they were or where they currently are. Perhaps you're co-parenting with them, and during co-parenting times, you're unsure if your young children are sitting around while somebody is drinking. But what do you think? How would I be best to help my clients? And what advice would you give them?
So here's to the people who have the problem. Okay. Because these are two separate things. To the people who have the problems that are your clients. One, it's okay. I think nowadays it's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. And what people don't understand is millions suffer with this. So you are not the only one with this problem, and that there are ways to get help and that you can release the shame. But also I'm going to use some tough love here. If the reason you're getting divorced is because your partner left you because of your drinking and your addiction to alcohol, what else do you want to lose?
Right.
Because if it got to that point where it's like, how far lower do you want to go? But also on top to that too, maybe some of your clients have not experienced their lowest yet, and they need something more. But it's like, do you want to get to that point where what could be next? The kids being taken away with you because you were a disaster. And then in 20 years, because what people don't understand about drinking problems, it's a long-term game. So you might have a 5-year-old right now who loves and adores you, but I give you 20 years where that little girl or that little boy is going to hate you, is going to resent you, is going to always wonder, why did mom or dad pick alcohol over me? And then guess what's going to happen to them? They are going to grow up and be an adult child of an alcoholic. And then there comes all of their problems with their anxiety, with their self-esteem issues. And possibly, quite possibly, because it's 50% learned behavior and 50% genetics, they're going to have a drinking problem just like you.
Exactly.
So think about that. Also, too, when I talk about the long game, think about your health.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's blowing my mind. I'm 40 years old, and I have known many people who have actually died under the age of 50 because they're drinking themselves to death, who are quote unquote functioning.
Yeah.
So to the person that is the one with the problem, what more do you want to lose? And it's just going to get more expensive, more expensive, more expensive. Yeah, because the amount, I believe the statistic is the average American spends $400 on alcohol a month.
Wow.
That's a lot of money. So then you take in consideration child support, now only a one income household, and then you're pissing $400. That's just on alcohol.
Oh,
Let's
right.
not even get if you are one of those who drink and spend money online, or just or all the Uber Eats that you're eating, just it all adds up, right? So what more do you want to lose? That is my tough love of it. Like it's only going to get worse and worse and worse, and it might not present itself tomorrow, but it will present itself 20 years down the road. Do you want to get into another relationship? Because if your first wife or husband divorced you because of your drinking problem, the second one's not going to be better.
No, not unless you find a person who's interested in the same habit and you're not bettering each other.
Exactly. So, and what happens too is usually people who start drinking, the age they start drinking at is the maturity that they're stuck in. So you start drinking at 21, you're going to have that maturity level for that long of a time. So yeah. So do you want to keep living like that? I know it from personal experience because I was a sober bartender and worked at the same bar for a very, very long time. And I saw a lot of men who saw them for periods of time, and then at 50 years old, they're sitting there alone at a bar stool because they thought women were indisposable. And also, too, these good women left them because they had drinking problems. That's not a judgment. That is just straight up observation and facts. So do you want to be alone and miserable at 50, 60 years old? And if that's the road you want to go, right, then go and be it, and cut ties with the people around you that love you, even your children. Right. Save them some stress. And then speaking upon it to the loved one who is divorcing because they can't take the husband or wife with the problem, you need to actually go get help. You need to go get help to heal from your own traumatic experiences that you had that. And even emotional neglect can be traumatic for people. You also need to figure out too why you attracted this into your life. Was your father or mother an alcoholic? Mm-hmm. Was there codependency issues? What was it? Right. So one, get help on that. And also two, I know we talked about this before in a pre-call that you and I had, and then I know it gets involved with the children. And then it's because then I know it goes into the court system of I personally, if my ex was drinking around the kids, I would fight to not have them around, to not have them around that parent. You just never know when somebody is drunk and not present, even being hungover the next day, you're not present with your children.
You're not. What do you think to the client? She's leaving her husband. They're going through a divorce and she knows that he has a drinking problem. He shouldn't be drinking during the time that he has the children, but you have a pretty good inclination that something is going on, whether it's the children who have told you, and you want to talk to that person about it, right? I want to tell my husband that I'm divorcing, that I just want to keep those kids safe, but I don't want to push him over because I do still care about his own health. I care about him and I don't want to make him go to alcohol even more because now I'm saying things that could be a trigger.
Okay. But this is where this goes back to that person. You cannot be responsible. They're going to drink no matter what. They're going to be triggered if it's raining outside. It is not your responsibility now is to protect your kids and yourself.
Yep.
Put on your oxygen mask first and then put the oxygen mask on the little kiddos. But it is not people have to stop taking responsibility that they can fix this. The only one who can fix it is the person with the problem. Once they start fixing themselves, once they start to like, okay, I'm no longer going to drink, then it's on them to repair the relationships around them. So that's why I said with the person getting out of it, if you've given this person ultimatums time and time and time before, and they're not doing it, exit stage left. It is time to go. Unless you want to settle, and then I don't want to say settle because some people's situations are financially involved. I get all of that, but if you're ready to get out and find yourself some help and look into codependency and people pleasing, because you can't fix that person.
So that boundary you suggest we set is just really cutting the ties and letting them make their choice, but keeping your children and yourself safe from it. And that's not easy when it's up to the courts.
I know. And that's what, I know. That's why I wish that system would kind of turn this around and hope that there is one day that these systems do better. I'm sorry to say that on a law, but
okay. It's hard. You have to get other people to believe your story when somebody is going against it. And that puts people in a really hard position.
It does. But if you were there, like, because here's the thing too, like it's the boy who cried wolf. Okay. Right. So you could have been telling your wife or husband for a very long time, if you don't stop drinking, I'm going to leave. And that was 5 years ago and 6 years ago and 7 years. And you keep saying it and you do nothing. And guess what? That shows them that you will never leave until you actually physically take you and the kids out of the equation and figure it out. Sometimes you just have to figure it out before there is a plan. Like, even if that's just taking them to a hotel room one night and see what happens, but the person with the problem, they have to come down to, what more do you want to lose? What more do you want to lose? Because you're losing your family. And I'm going to tell you out there, what I hear now on these streets is that the dating game is hard. Like,
yeah, I bet.
So, and some things can be repairable and building new, but also too, it's just like, it just doesn't, there's a lot, there's a lot of layers to the topic of addiction and then what underlines it. And especially in a home, the roles that both of the people play.
Now let's talk about the stigma if you go and get help for yourself. Mm-hmm. So I feel that sometimes when people have to get mental health services and counseling, there's something negative about that. People, work employment places where you're working, you might be looked down upon for going to get mental health help. And I think that it's wonderful when people can say that they need somebody to talk to. And it's not just because there's a negative and there's something wrong with them, but how do you admit that you have a problem and tell family if they didn't realize it? How do you get yourself to go get that help and not worry what people are going to think about you?
Well, one, it's 2023. Like, honestly. And two, if there's a reason that you are anti-help, anti-therapy, anti-anything, that you don't have a problem, you're good. One, that's your ego. And two, that could have been a conditioning from your parents, so because it's all of a sudden, it's like, where did this belief come from that you didn't think that you need help? Everybody needs help nowadays in 2023. I mean, I don't need a recount of what just right with media, with mass shootings, with just the social media and the overwhelm of that. Like what more, so we all need help. Mm-hmm. But this is the thing. You don't have to tell anybody about that until you're ready to. You go get the help first. And if you need to keep it quiet to yourself, keep it quiet to yourself. You know, I have a hard time. That's just terrible if an employer will like shun that. Does that happen?
I think it does. I think people are afraid to say that they have an appointment that they need to go to or that they are
Gotcha.
receiving services because they don't want anybody to think something's wrong with them, which I don't, there's nothing wrong with you. You're doing the right thing.
Right, right. So yeah, I mean, if possible, if you could schedule those services after work. I mean, nowadays too, there's so much on telehealth that you could, with therapy, that you could just do via therapist. You know, even my services and coaching, I do it over Zoom. So, and I work a lot with people's schedule. So, and even if you find a therapist or whatever that doesn't work for you, that doesn't work with your time because you don't want to take off any time of work, go find another one who will fill that slot and takes your insurance and all of that, you know, and just lie. You don't need to be upfront. You could be like, I have to go to my primary care physician for some blood work. Nobody needs to know anything. You know, that's where it gets into people who, when people want to over explain or whatnot. But if you do, just say you have just a general checkup at your doctor's.
Yeah. We talked too about in our last call the sober bars.
Mm-hmm.
When you're not at a sober bar, which I'll get into because I had never heard of a sober bar before our conversation. What do what's some advice you're separating from a spouse? You might be a free, woman to go out and be with girlfriends who you haven't been able to be with in some time. Your ex has the children for the weekend and you're gonna go somewhere. How do you safely stay away from alcohol if that was your addiction?
Well, definitely. I mean, taking the sober bars out of it, because there is a rise of sober bars coming up. There's sometimes a lot of pop-ups. I know in bigger cities, there's sober bars. So that's great. You could always ask a girlfriend like, hey, let's go check this out, you know? But I think what is important to do when you're getting a divorce and going through that process, because I have worked with women who got the divorce, they were quote unquote free, went wild, and then became a problem. Then drinking became a problem in their lives. So I think it's very important to take this opportunity of asking just girlfriends to go for coffee. Okay. Ask a girlfriend to go for coffee. Ask a girlfriend to go to a movie. Mm-hmm. Ask a girlfriend to go to an exercise class. I think right now, for anybody going through that process, you have to stick to some healthy boundaries and finding healthy outlets for yourself.
Right.
Like putting yourself in the bar situation, is that really the environment you want to be in? And if that is, okay. But if it isn't, and that's a slippery slope for you, then you really have to find other avenues of places to hang out. And there's tons of them. I mean, going to grab a coffee with a girlfriend, all you need to do is talk and just talk out your feelings. You know, you need somebody there to listen and a good cup of coffee.
It's perfect. Mm-hmm. So I'm right here in the middle of Boston, Mass and Providence, Rhode Island, and I've never heard of a sober bar. So I can't be the only one. So
right.
What are they?
They are, well, there is a whole in the past couple of years. Well, probably, yeah, like the past 6-ish years, there is a rise of what is called mocktails.
Yep.
NA spirits and NA beers and wines, which it's amazing, you know, and some of these NA beers are delicious. I can't really mess with the NA wines because it's like a little bit too close to home. And then what people are doing is making either pop-up events of these bars or having a designated space where it's just served all non-alcoholic drinks, where it still feels that inclusion, that you can go out and participate and that you can go and have a couple mocktails. So that's what the NA bars are all about. There's one. So I live in the suburbs of Detroit, and there's one that it's a very cool space. They also have coffee in there, and they have like a little bit of food, but then they have this like whole bar section, and everything is NA. And then they have a little shop that you can buy NA beers and wines and take home with you.
Wow, that's awesome.
Mhm.
How cool is that? Let's move on in this. And how do you proceed? What do you do instead of sitting home and taking out a bottle or mixing a drink or opening the refrigerator for some beer? What are some better alternatives?
So I like to those like I want to give 3 ways to really like deal with divorce in a healthy way,
Yep.
because it's possible. It's so possible. One, again, you got to find some type of hobby. Is there something that you've always wanted to do that you never had the time for because maybe you were more of the caretaker of the kids, and now that you're splitting your time with the children, like what can you do? And if there's always something you wanted to do, like let's say you wanted to become a yogi, or you wanted to take an adult painting class, the time is now.
Right.
Maybe you have a passion project that you're like, I've always wanted to turn this into a business.
Mhm.
Maybe you want to start a podcast. Here, you got the time. This is a healthy outlet. It's creative. It's you're putting your energy into something good, and instead of something negative, So really finding a hobby. If you don't have anything that has appealed to you in the past couple of years where you're just feeling stuck, take it back to your childhood. What did you enjoy doing when you were a kid?
Right.
We all have something that we enjoyed doing as we were kids. So like when I quit drinking, because I did not have any hobbies, and which I Googled hobbies, by the way, in those first couple of weeks,
Yes.
because my hobby was working and drinking.
Yeah.
And I had to bring it back to my childhood too, where I was like, I always liked baking. And my dad on the weekends, because I come from divorced parents, my parents got divorced when I was 7. So I spent on the weekends. My dad did not have a lot of money because he, of course, was paying child support and, supporting an ex-wife with 4 kids.
Mhm.
And he would let me get like boxes of brownies or cake. And so I baked it on the weekends because that was my thing to do over at his house. So I really enjoyed baking. So I got back into baking, and it was very creative. It kept my mind busy. I got lost in it. And then I'm like, okay, cool. It's almost time to go to bed. Done.
That's awesome.
Yep.
So we're having, full bellies from your baking.
Exactly.
Good
And
to
then 2, you need to find some type of support. Like I said earlier, you got to find some type of support, whether that is within a community that you really vibe with. Is it into therapy, a coach situation? You need to find something. I mean, I'm sure that there's probably like divorce grieving groups or something. I don't know. And then the third, I would say this is the healthiest thing you can do. You need to grieve. You need to grieve that life, because and I tell clients this all the time too. You once had to grieve your old drinking self in that relationship that you had with alcohol for this, because divorce is often compared to a death. You need to grieve what your life was once, and you need to grieve that partner. Whether that's you sitting there and having an ugly cry in the shower, screaming into a pillow, maybe screaming in your car before you turn it on, something, but you got to get that feelings out, and that it's okay. Even if you were the one who initiated the divorce, just because you initiated a divorce doesn't mean that you're not upset about it.
Right, of course.
So grieving, like those are the healthiest 3 things I could tell somebody to do in that process of divorce, and also to not drinking.
Yeah.
They go together, because in that creativeness of finding a hobby, you're going to bring back the spark of who you are standing on your own 2 feet.
Yeah, I was thinking some hobbies, getting out and volunteering back, maybe have an interest that there's a volunteer group for an upcoming event, or start taking care of yourself by, even riding bikes. I was thinking that was what you were going to say was your childhood.
Well, I did that too, but yeah.
Getting out there and, finding people with that same common interest, something refinishing an old dresser, even if it's something you currently have,
Yeah.
really keeping your mind busy when you would be drinking.
Yeah, because too, I think it would probably be, and that's the thing too, if down the road you want to find love again, you have to heal what was hurt and broken from that relationship previous, especially if you're looking for a healthier relationship. Okay. And there's something in you that might have attracted your ex that you have to work on. A lot of this stuff for anybody is self-reflection and awareness of their own selves.
So, my clients call me and we talk about co-parenting and,
Mhm.
worries that they have when they're going into court for the first time, the financial burden that this puts on, both parties in this divorce and separation. We talk about how to communicate and how to document, and it's all full-time jobs. But when clients call you, what does it look like? So if I have clients out here that want to get help or they want to recommend you, what does it look like when they pick up that call?
Well, my clients have access through me through an app called Voxer.
Okay.
So they can text me. So we do a text, and then once a week we meet on Zoom for about a 40 to 45-minute meeting. And really with my clients, because I've always, all my clients are met at a different place in their life. So working with me, it's never like, this is what we're going to do at week 1, week 2, week 3, because it's very tailored to where the person is. And I found that extremely important, because in the recovery sobriety process, it's not a one size fits all, and everybody's at different parts. Like, I've worked with people out of rehab and after a 90-day rehab, and they've just needed support and accountability to get them through another 90 days. So yeah, so they have access to me through that app, and they can text me. And and then if somebody has a problem that day, we work through it through the text, and there's also been other times where I have jumped on people on an extra Zoom just to talk to them in person, and if there's an issue going on that day that they need help with.
Right. So are some people that you work with still battling this addiction?
Yes. Yes, there is. I can't guarantee anybody addiction or sobriety. And if anybody ever says I can get you sober 100%, you should run away from them. Um, there's 3 that I know of that still continue to drink today. That they've had periods of sobriety, but sometimes that's how people, it takes a while for it to click. So, but there's a lot that have worked with me and then they've never drank again. But they also got to the point of, I have a lot of people who end up working with me that, especially with high achievers, that they have tried and tried and tried and gotten to the point where they're like, okay, I need to do something different.
Yeah.
So nobody who really starts the sober journey, nobody who's like, okay, I'm never going to drink again. It's very rare that someone starts a sober journey like that. It usually takes some time. For me, it took 4 years until I finally was like, okay, I cannot have 1 drop of alcohol.
Right. Do you have to find yourself staying away from people who are drinking, or have you gotten to where you can be around others?
I'm fine being around others. My year 2, I went back to bartending because I wanted to start. I was starting to transition out of the medical field, because when I got sober, I was working in it full time, and I was like, this is not what I wanted to do. This was a decision I made in my active addiction, and I do not want to continue on to this.
Right.
So I am fine around people. I don't judge people who drink. Now, people who have been close to for many, many years, if they have a problem, that's when it's hard to be around somebody drinking. When you know that the person has a legit problem and it's impacted you in a certain way. But no, I'm fine. I'm able to go out and live, and it's just, I'm sober living in an alcohol fueled world. That's
Right.
it. But I'm comfortable with it. But it took me a little bit to get to that, especially too in my coaching. I like to bridge that gap with people and shorten the time, because for me it took like 2 years, and I give people the tools in an easier way for them not to wait so long to be like, okay, it's year 2. I can do this now. You got to get really uncomfortable in this world sober.
Right. Yeah. It's, it's the biggest takeaway from so much of what we deal with is having the strength to stand up, whether it's to stand up to leave the, person that you're with, to stand up and say, I can't do this. Eating on, some people are eating their way to obesity, and they need that they're, turning to, drinking or drugs or, any other addiction.
Yep. Gambling, pornography. Yep. Eating.
You have to be ready to say that you're done. I've tried dieting multiple times, right? And finally you look in the mirror one day and you're like, this is it. I can't play with my children, and it's the same for alcohol. I feel like you must have that point where all of a sudden something happened or you forgot what happened.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, people have to realize the person with the problem is sick.
Yeah.
They're sick. And it's very frustrating because you're like, well, why can't you? And it's very frustrating because there's a lot of selfishness in it. Again, with how accessible it is in a lot of countries, how people were raised in a home. And then there's some people who just don't give an F.
Yeah.
I'm not saying not everybody's a lost cause. They're not, because anybody can change. But there are some people who they don't want to. Yeah. They just don't want to. And that's why it's important for that person who is in that relationship to get the help and tools so they can understand it was not them.
Right.
And Detach with Love. Great book by Melody Beattie. Codependent No More. Because like I said, it's not just let's quit drinking, everything's going to get better. There's so many layers to the talk around addiction.
And did you say you wrote a book?
I did. Yes. I have a book coming out, but that book I just plugged was Melody Beattie's. But yes, I have a book coming out August 15th of 2023. Pre-order is available, and it's called Sober Vibes, a guide to living your first 3 months without alcohol. So it's coaching somebody through the first 90 days.
Awesome. Which will come out right around a date that's important to you.
Yes. Yep. So yeah, that book comes out on a Tuesday, and then August 18th, I'll be 11 years sober. So it's crazy how that all worked out. So that's going to be a busy week.
Awesome. So much to be proud of. Let's think of some resources that I can give to some clients or some, to anybody. You're ready to get help. Where do you go?
Okay. Easiest and free is look up AA meetings around you.
Yep.
That's the easiest. You walk in those doors and you have a whole in-person community. So you have that option. If that is not an option for you, then you take to the internet.
Yeah.
You can find me on Instagram at Sober Vibes. You can even if I don't relate to you, if there's a listener, because I'm not for everybody. Sure. But you can just go on Instagram, type up sober, and watch all of these communities that pop up. And I say this in my book too. So look around, find people who you vibe with, who you're like, all right, cool. I like this dude or girl, and see what they got going on. Google, just meetings, addiction meetings. There's other 12-step programs besides AA that a lot of this now is all done on Zoom, all of that. If not, if you don't want to go those avenues, go on psychologytoday.com and look up a therapist that specializes in addiction. Look up a specialized therapist who, around you in your area, and you can go from there, and then throw out some emails of seeing if they take your insurance, seeing, if they don't take your insurance, if they work on a sliding scale, and if therapy is something that you want to navigate. But there's so many resources. That person just has to do the work.
Now, AA is free to go attend meetings?
Yep, AA is free, so that's, and you can go in person. If you don't even want to vibe with the AA, you can go to NA, Narcotics Anonymous, so I know some people who are alcoholics, but they enjoy people better in NA.
Okay.
And that's fine. You can do that. There also too, on the flip side of that, there's also two meetings for loved ones out there that you can look up if you were a person, the wife or the husband of somebody who is using. There's meetings for that. There is meetings for all of it now. So yeah. So in person, free, or you can do Zoom, look up AA. And then again, there's all the avenues of what's been popping for the last, 5-6 years of sober coaches, recovery communities, all of that. There is now, there's so many communities now that there's even a specific nonprofit organization called Ben's Friend. And I love this one. And you know what they specialize in? People who are in the service industry who have had drinking problems and are sober in the service industry. So like there's groups for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's groups for everybody. You just have to do the work and look it up.
Right. That's awesome.
And there's a whole slew of podcasts, sober vibes podcasts. Look up sober on iTunes and all the podcasts that will come up, and just you plugging into that, because a lot of people, it takes them a minute before they get into that, but start listening to a podcast of what these people are talking about and relate to them and see what they have going on in their community.
I love it. All right. So Sober Vibes. How do we reach you?
I hang out on Instagram a lot. That is my favorite platform. I'm just starting the TikTok game, but Sober Vibes on Instagram. You can visit my website, CourtneyRecovered.com. And then there's the Sober Vibes podcast. So I do one-on-one coaching. And then I also too have a community that's just for meetings and personal development. That's more of a group, but I have tons of free resources. I have a 30-day sober, not boring calendar that gives you stuff to do for the next 30 days that doesn't involve alcohol. And then of course my book that's coming out in the summertime.
I can't wait. I look forward to that.
Thank you. It's
been really inspiring. I have loved talking with you and meeting you. I appreciate all the time that you've given. And, I hope that people who, we're working with out here in the divorce world, have really benefited from hearing it. Just takes the same strength that they had to come to our firm to stand up and better themselves. Every day we're trying to make them start a new life,
Yeah. Yes. I've enjoyed talking to you too. And just, if you cannot, if somebody's listening who you're struggling with, if you cannot do it for yourself, do it for, and you have kids with somebody, do it for the kids. Cause like I said, it's a long game, and you can fix a relationship with changed behavior. So, if you have a 5-year-old, you can repair that, and it would be easier to repair now of the damage you've done than down the road when this child's 25 and there's 20 years of damage. That's hard to come back from. So, just think of the kids.
I see people think that their kids don't have anything wrong with them, and they're drinking and they have a drinking problem that they will admit themselves, and they think that their kids just, it's not affecting them, and
right,
sure speak that that's not the case.
Here's my tough love. That's BS. Kids know. You're not keeping anything a secret. And that's the delusion that person in their drinking is thinking. So I hope if anybody has that attitude right now, because a lot do, it's BS. I have a 1.5-year-old, and yesterday I stubbed my toe and said the F word. And guess what he said?
Yeah.
He said, uck. And I looked at him and I was like smiling, and I was like, what'd you just say? Yeah. And he goes, uck. I was like, oh God. So you have these little kids who these informative years up until they're 7 years old, they are sponges. This is the core of who they become later down the road. So yes, they know. They know if mommy and daddy were slurring or swaying or not present with them, or the next day you're waking up and they're smelling alcohol on you. These kids know.
Yeah.
They're not, because they're children, they're not. That's what I hate. Like, these kids get like discounted well, they're kids. Take that mentality out, because that's an old ass mentality that's generational stuff.
That's right.
Uh-huh.
Well, this has been great. And I really hope that we can have, some clients benefit from your words of advice and the encouragement. And, we're proud of you here at
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm sure lots of people are also proud of you. It takes a lot to admit your struggles and to receive the help and then to turn it around and be able to help other people.
Mm-hmm.
You know firsthand what they're dealing with. So I'm sure that helps people go through the experience, because we hear a lot of people say you don't understand, but you do. You've been.
Yeah, that's why it's very important to get with a person, whether it's in the program with AA or a coach, or in a community, honestly, or a therapist who has been with it. And I say this too in my book, where I say you need to be interviewing the people that you've gotten help from. What are they doing? Do they have it? Because here's the thing. I've heard, like, people are people at the end of the day. Whether you're a therapist, you are a sponsor, you are a coach, you are a doctor. So, like, if you're going to take time to get help from somebody, ask them what they've been doing in their life.
Yeah.
And, it's like, does a therapist have a therapist? Does a coach have a coach or a therapist? Does a sponsor have a therapist or a coach, or their own sponsor? Does somebody sponsor them? Like, you got to interview some of these people to be like, what is your experience in this? So,
yeah,
uh-huh.
You've been there, you've done it, and now you're getting people through it.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to seeing where things go for you and
thank you.
Release of that book. And this has been great. I really hope that we, had a great connection here. And I hope some of our clients find this helpful.
I hope so too. So
we all know somebody who's battling.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. Even if your client's listening and they have a sister or brother, like, here, listen to this, because there's a lot of people who sit there and suffer in silence. Yeah,
that's right. Well, hopefully they can speak up, and hopefully you're giving great power for people to do that.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's been a great time talking with you today, and I'm so glad we connected.
Me too. And I hope everybody comes over and visits you and shouts out on Instagram, and maybe one day we'll find each other out on TikTok.
Yes, we will. We will.
Yes. Well, I appreciate it. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Okay, you too. Thank you.
Have a good day.